Rapture becomes her. Chapter 22. Emily gasped in shock. Suspecting one of Barnaby's cousins wanted to murder him had been bad enough. But for it to be Simon, devastated, she could hardly look at him. This friend of her childhood, this beast who had tried to kill her husband. Barnaby was equally shocked and aware of a bitter disappointment. He liked Simon, but for the culprit to be the youngest Jocelyn cousin shouldn't have been a surprise. When his two brothers had returned to Monk's Abbey, Simon had remained behind in the windmill to kill him. He and Lamb had discussed the possibility that it could have been Simon that had laid the trap for him the morning Satan had been trapped, but dismissed it. Because Barnaby admitted, savagely, I didn't want it to be him. I liked him, he thought again, a mixture of rage and sorrow twisting his guts. Simon sensed something was wrong, and his smile faltered. Halting abruptly a few feet away, he said, Have I arrived at a bad time? I know I should have written first, but something came up and he smiled uncertainly. I can stay in the village if it is inconvenient for me to be here right now. Rising to his feet, Barnaby shook his head. No, nothing is wrong. We were just surprised to have the guests arrive this late. Meeting Simon in the middle of the room, he shook his hand and, indicating a place at the table, said, Please come join us. Have you eaten? Shall I ring for Peckham to bring you something? Barnaby's manner eased the awkwardness, and Simon said, No, that it isn't necessary. I have already eaten at Lord Broadfoot's. He grinned at Emily as he took a seat and added, Laugh if you will, but I came to see him about a horse. Trying to act naturally, she exclaimed, Never say so. You know he is not reliable when it comes to horses. Simon chuckled. I know. But I was in the market for a new pair, and he wrote me, extolling the virtues of a stunning pair of chestnuts he has for sale, and I thought I'd taken a chance that for once he had actually gotten his hands on something worthy. I rode over this morning from Monk's Abbey. He sent Emily an apologetic glance. The moment I arrived at Broadfoot's, I should have had him send one of his servants over with a note. I apologize for not doing so. Oh, pay it no heed, Emily said. Infusing warmth into her voice, she added, Of course you're always welcome at Windmere. We are family after all. And Broadfoot's horses, Barnaby asked, did the pair live up to his praises? Well, they are eventually matched all right, Simon replied with dancing eyes, and both of them tied at the knees and unable to do more than a polite shuffle. Emily and Barnaby laughed politely. Toying with his empty cup, Barnaby said, I have been happy to check them out for you first and save you a trip. Simon should have known better, Emily muttered. Broadfoot is the worst judge of horseflesh I've ever known. Everybody who knows him knows it. You're right, I should have known better, Simon admitted. But there was always the chance, he shrugged. Nothing venture, nothing gain. Emily managed to keep her emotions in check, smiling when necessary and acting as normally as possible. But all the while, fury and disbelief raged in her breast. She known Simon since childhood. He had always been kind to her, protecting her from bullying from his older brothers and making her smile with his silly teasing, and yet it seemed that he was also capable of cold-blooded murder. Of her husband, she reminded herself fiercely. Unconsciously, her fingers curled about a bread knife still on the table, and she fought against the urge to hold it right into Simon's smiling face. An hour later, with Simon safely shown to his rooms by Peckham, and Emily and Barnaby retired to her sitting room, upstairs, she confessed. It was all I could do not to take that knife, and she took a deep breath and a note of pain in her voice. She said, Oh, Barnaby, that it is Simon is unbelievable. He is the last person I would have suspected. Barnaby nodded. I'm having trouble believing it myself, but it has to be him. I'm convinced it was one of my cousins who was meeting with Noels this afternoon, and there is no sign of Matthew or Thomas. He grimaced. Like it or not, Simon is here and they are not. Sinking down onto the sofa, Emily kicked off her satin slippers and said, what a devious character he is. Writing to Matthew, claiming to be worried about you, pretending to be concerned for you, when he is the very one trying to kill you. He's clever, I'll grant you that. But what are we going to do about him? Emily asked, watching Barnaby pacing restlessly back and forth in front of her. Barnaby had no answer for her. He didn't see much would be gained by confronting Simon with his suspicion. He had no proof, and Simon would most likely brush it all aside and prove to be even willier. Nor could he go to Matthew with those same suspicions. Even if Matthew was entirely innocent, Matthew's first instinct would be to protect his brother. Besides, they have to devise a plan to catch Simon in the act. Not a pleasant thought when the act meant his life would be in peril, he admitted. Yet, as he considered the situation, a simple idea occurred to him. If tomorrow afternoon he and the others went boldly into the tunnels, perhaps even with the young riding officer, Lieutenant Daring, and trumpeted their discovery of, hopefully, a large stash of contraband, wouldn't that solve everything? If the reason behind the attacks on him was to prevent discovery of the use of the channels, but on Noel's gain, wouldn't that reason have disappeared? And once the use of the tunnels became known to the revenues, wouldn't the smugglers be forced to find a new place to hide their contraband? Sitting down beside Emily, he put forth his ideas or ending the situation. Emily wasn't happy about any of it. Bluntly, she said, acting as bait to draw him out is foolish. Even with all of us shadowing you, there is every possibility that Simon still might be able to kill you. But it will do us no good to know you're a murderer if you are dead. Her lovely eyes full of anxiety, she said, I love you. I don't want to become a widow within weeks of having become a bride. Taking her into his arms, Barnabas sought to reassure her. He kissed her tenderly and lifting his lips from hers, he said, and I love you. I want to grow very old with you by my side and our children and grandchildren gathered around us. Sweetheart, I am not about to take unnecessary chances. Offering yourself as bait isn't taking chances, she asked sharply. He shrugged, perhaps a little. But if Simon couldn't kill me when I had no idea who it was behind the attacks, what makes you think he'll be successful now that we know who he is? I don't like it, she said, her expression tight and unhappy. I'm not particularly keen on it myself, Barnaby admitted. But if we don't expose him and simply find the contraband and dutifully turn it over to Lieutenant Daring, Simon Noels and even Peckham will escape justice. They'll just set up their operation somewhere else in the county. His jaw tightened. Of course, Peckham won't be our butler anymore, but being let go without references doesn't seem quite punishment enough for my liking. Emily made a face. I agree, and while I don't like it that Simon and his cohorts would escape punishment, I much prefer that to having you murdered. Her fingers traced his jaw. Having you dead would make me dreadfully unhappy. He kissed her fingertips, a wave of love flooding him. The last thing he wanted was to die, and he didn't plan to do so. But he couldn't dismiss Emily's fear lightly. If he offered himself as bait, there was always the chance that something would go wrong and Simon would kill him. And then there was Emily herself. Keeping her safe and out of danger was his paramount concern. But his Amazonian bride, he admitted, torn between pride and dread, was hardly going to loiter about while Simon attempted to kill him. Barnaby wanted her out of it, but at the moment he didn't see any way that could be accomplished. Abruptly he said, "We can accomplish no more tonight. We have to talk to Lamb and Luke." Barnaby informed Lamb of Simon's presence in the house late that evening, when Lamb returned from visiting Luke. Like Emily and Barnaby, Lamb initially had trouble believing the person trying to kill Barnaby was Simon, but he accepted the idea more readily than had Emily and Barnaby. Helping Barnaby out of his jacket as he prepared for bed, Lamb said, "It makes sense if you think about it. Simon's the youngest of the brothers, and his fortune would have been the the least of them all. He had inherited enough, though, to finance some smuggling, and if his profits were managed wisely, he could turn a small fortune into a very large one." "I'm not arguing with you," Barnaby said, ripping off his cravat and tossing it on a chair. Glancing at Lamb, he asked, "Will you go to Luke tonight?" Lamb shook his head. "Too many people might wonder why, having just returned from the Dower House, I suddenly need to return. I'll see him in the morning." He looked at Barnaby, frowning. "She absolutely has to be part of this?" Barnaby grinned at him. "If you remember, you're the one who named her Amazon. Do you really think we can keep her out of it?" Lim grimaced. "Probably not." It was afternoon when Barnaby and Emily met with Lamb and Luke at the Dower House. Cornelia had been delighted by Simon's visit, and neither Barnaby nor Emily had the heart to tell her the truth. Cornelia's presence, however, helped Simon's stay seem normal, but by the time Cornelia disappeared upstairs for her afternoon nap, and Simon had ridden off to the village, Emily was exhausted from smiling and pretending everything was fine. Being greeted by Walker at the Dower House lifted her spirits, and she was smiling when she and Barnaby walked into the burgundy and gray sitting room where Lamb and Luke awaited them. Once Walker left the room and Emily had taken a seat in a thicker gray velvet chair by the fire, Luke said, "What a devilish quarrel." Looking at Barnaby, who had taken up a position just behind his wife near the fire, he asked, "How do you intend to flush him out?" Barnaby sighed, knowing Emily wasn't going to be to like the plan that he finally thought best. Letting Simon and Noel's walk away didn't set well with him. Not looking at Emily, he said, "I see only one way, and that is for me to exhibit myself like a piece of raw meat before a tiger and hope he takes the bait." He smiled at Lamb and Luke. "And once he has me between his claws, that you, my two stalwart fellows, pounce on him before he does me very much damage." His wife looked at him as if he had lost his mind. "That's the very worst idea," she said tightly, "I've ever heard." "Actually," Lamb said, rubbing his chin, "Luke and I discussed something similar this morning. Of course we could just tell the authorities, but I miss like letting rats scamper free." Avoiding Emily's glare, he said, "We might not be able to catch Noel's in our net, but if we catch Simon, Noel's would have lost his big London backer, which will hurt him. That in the loss of the windmill tunnels," he eyed Barnaby. "But in order to catch Simon, we have to draw him out some way, and you're the only one he wants." Outraged, Emily snapped, "Easy for you to say. It's not your life at risk." "It is true," Luke said, "but Simon doesn't want Lamb. He wants your husband. Better we control the situation than allow Simon to do so." Her head down bent, Emily said in a small voice, "I don't want them to escape unscathed either, but I want my husband to alive more than I want them to suffer reputation. There has to be another way." Barnaby came around and sat a hip on the arm of her chair. Forcing her chin up, his eyes on hers, he said, "I'll take all the precautions I can. Remember, we have an advantage. We know who is trying to kill me, and we know why Simon wants me out of the picture." She didn't take much comfort from his words, and she demanded, "Is there nothing I can say that will dissuade you?" His heart ached for causing her distress, but Barnaby shook his head. "Not unless you can come up with a better idea." She couldn't, and though she listened intently as they discussed plans to keep Barnaby safe, adding her own bitter comments from time to time, she wasn't reassured. The only thing she agreed with was that they explore the tunnels as soon as possible and discover if the smugglers were actually using them. "The tunnel should be entered through the old barn," Emily said. "That way we avoid Peckham or any of the other servants wondering why we're interested in a wine cellar. If the smugglers are using the tunnels, the contraband will be stored in a place that provides the easiest entrance and exit to Old Barn." The tunnel was widened at the end, and as I recall, there's a large cavern perfectly suitable for storing a large amount of contraband. Her jaw set. She glowered at Barnaby and continued, "There's no reason for all of us to go trooping through the channels. Obviously I need to go, but I want only one other person with me, and that person will not be you. Lamb or Luke can accompany me." Barnaby would have argued, but the glitter in her eyes told him she would not back down from her stand, and a further comment would be useless. "Very well. Who do you want to go with you?" Without hesitation, she said, "Lamb." Luke looked disappointed, but her choice made sense. If he was going to be poking about in the tunnel with the possibility that he might come face to face with a smuggler, he preferred Lamb at his side rather than a man who had just risen from his sick bed not many days ago. "When?" Barnaby asked, not happy with his wife risking her neck, while he remained safely behind. "Now," she said, rising to her feet and shaking out the skirts of her indigo velvet riding habit. "It is the middle of the day, and none of the smugglers will be about. Simon is in the village, and Peckham is at the house. Our horses are saddled and ready. Lamb and I should be gone less than an hour." Barnaby looked at Lamb. "Bring her back to me safe and sound." Lamb nodded. Watching Emily and Lamb walk out of the room was the most difficult, painful thing Barnaby had ever been forced to do. Every instinct demanded that he stop her from leaving, the need to protect her, to keep her safe clawing at his vitals. He fought down the frantic urge to call her back, but he knew it would be futile, just as he would not be prevented from offering himself as bait. So would his wife not be diverted from her task? He scowled. Sometimes he decided bitterly they were too much alike for comfort. There was only one exchange between Emily and Lamb, as they mounted their horses and prepared to stay away from the Dower house. Eyeing her close expression, Lamb said, "You're angry." She flashed him a look that scorched his bones and retorted in a voice that did not invite further conversation, "No, I'm not angry. I'm furious." Pointing to a track through the woods that avoided the main drive and would give them cover, Emily kicked their horse into a canter, and Lamb meekly followed. Brave he might be, but not even he was prepared to take on a blazing-eyed Amazon. 12 minutes later, Emily turned her horse off the narrow path they had been following around the bottom of a series of sloping hills. She guided her horse several yards into a patch of trees that crowded alongside the side of the path before halting. Dismounting, she said, "From here we are, hidden by those hills over there, but as the crow flies, we are less than an eighth of a mile from the house. The barn is about 50 yards ahead. Through that stand of breeches, tie your horse and follow me." Lamb admired her coolness and the silent way she slipped through the woods. The Amazon knew what she was about, and he decided that if his back was against the wall, he'd be honored to have her at his side. The woods thinned, and the barn came into view. Emily examined the area carefully, and then, leaving the cover of the trees, hurried across an open expanse and saddled up next to the rear of the old wooden barn. Looking over her shoulder at Lamb, she said softly, "The main opening faces the road, but around the corner from us there is a smaller door. We'll enter that way." A moment later they were inside the barn, both noting that the door opened easily, perhaps a little too easily for an old, seldom used building. It was gloom inside the structure, the scent of hay and livestock filling their noses. Emily took a moment for her eyes to adjust to the dim light. Then she moved forward purposely. A row of sagging stalls stood along one side of the building, and on the other, bundles of hay and straw were piled high, leaving a wide aisleway running down the middle of the barn. Dust notes floated in the air, kicked up from their feet as Emily, followed closely by Lamb, crept forward. Their progress was careful in the dimness of the interior, all of their senses alert for the presence of others. They did a hasty reconnoitre, determining at the moment that they were the only inhabitants. Stopping in the middle of the barn, Emily stared at the thick carpet of hay and straw strewn across the floor. Softly she said, "If anybody looked, the hay would hide any signs of their activity." Lamb nodded. "Probably had laid down on their way out after unloading the contraband." He looked around. "Where's the entrance?" "Over here," she said, moving away. Halfway down the row of stalls, she stopped and throwing open the heavy stall door with Lamb at her heels, she stepped inside the stall. The ease with which she had opened the door to the stall told its own story, and a quick examination of the catch and hinges revealed that they had been well oiled. The floor of the stall was heaped with straw, but it took only a moment to kick it aside, exposing a trap door. Lamb grasped the handle, hidden in the straw, and lifted. The door opened soundlessly. A black hole yawned at their feet, the tip of a ladder showing at the edge of the darkness. Lamb cursed under his breath. "We didn't bring a lantern." Emily grinned at him, the ride to the barn having banished most of her fury. She edged around the trap door and reached into the manger filled with hay. Triumphantly from beneath the hay, she pulled a small lantern and a piece of flint. Lantern lit, after a short argument over which one should go first, Lamb descended the short wooden ladder. Crunching the skirts of her riding habit, Emily scrambled down behind him. Lamb hoisted the lantern and, staring at the piles and stacks of contraband pushed against the walls of the big cave-in he was standing in, he whistled. Together they walked along the rows of goods, barrels and tugs of overproof brandy and gin, ropes of tobacco, bolts of silk and velvet, and packets of lace and fine thread, among other things. "Merciful heavens!" Emily exclaimed, awed. "This isn't just for one run. It's a storehouse of contraband. They could supply anyone with anything at any time." "I agree," Lamb said. "We found what we're looking for. We need to leave." Though the impulse to explore further was strong, beyond showing him where, the tunnel narrowed and would lead to the house. Emily didn't argue. Within minutes they were out of the cavern, the lantern doused and once cooled, hidden under the hay in a manger. The trap door was shut, and the straw scattered over it. Careful to leave no sign of disturbance, they exited the barn and hastened to their horses. Rushing into the room where Barnaby and Luke waited, her face bright with exhilaration, Emily launched herself into Barnaby's arms and cried, "We were right. We found a mountain of contraband. There's enough goods stored in the tunnel to supply half of London for 6 months." Clutching Emily to him as if he would never let her go, Barnaby glanced over at Lamb, who followed her into the room. Smiling Lamb nodded. They're not only using the tunnel to hide their contraband, they're using it to warehouse the goods. They can go weeks without making a run, yet still keep their buyers supplied. His smile faded. I'm not surprised that Simon wants you dead. There's a bloody fortune involved. There is no small smuggling operation by a band of desperate fishermen. It's huge and worth killing for. The mention of Simon's little designs on her husband shattered Emily's exhilaration. Even with his arms cradling her close, a chill slid down her spine, forcing herself to leave behind the confront of his warm body. She made one more attempt to change Barnaby's mind about placing himself in danger. Revealing the whereabouts of the contraband to Lieutenant Deering would be devastating to the smugglers, she said. They lose their warehouse in the contraband. Simon would have no reason to try to kill you. Barnaby shook his head. I don't want to simply take away Simon's reason for wanting me dead. I want him and the Noel's gang destroyed. Yes, losing the hiding place and the goods would be a massive blow, but it wouldn't stop them. The contraband would be in the hands of the authorities, but everyone connected to the smuggling operation would remain untouched. When Emily started to argue, he warned, remember, all we be given Darren is the location of smuggled goods. We have suspicion of plenty, but we have no proof of Noel's and Simon's participation. We can tell Darren what we suspect, but without proof, he can't touch them. I'll wager that within a matter of months, perhaps weeks with Simon's backing, Noel's will be in business again. Mayhap not on the scale they are now, at least not right away, but in time, they re-establish themselves. All Darren will do is eliminate one hiding place and deal with a financial blow, but nothing else. The game, the contacts, the routes, and the bribe revenue officers will all remain. A grim smile flitted across his face. I'm sure Simon is clever enough to find another place to safely warehouse the enormous amount of contraband he's moving regularly from France to London now. It might not be as convenient, but I'm sure it exists. He frowned, struck by a thought. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if he already has a site selected. He's not a stupid man. He has considered all angles. Gloomily, Emily conceded that Barnaby was right. Blast him. Simon and Noel had to be destroyed once and for all. It was difficult for her to greet Simon in her usually friendly manner that evening. She smiled and laughed at the appropriate times, but her heart wasn't in it. Cornelia was in fine form flirting with both gentlemen, and Barnaby appeared to have no trouble conversing, and with a man he knew had tried 3 times to kill him and would most likely try again. Emily was grateful for their contributions, because she could barely bring herself to speak to Simon. While the conversation ranged around her, from beneath her lashes, Emily studied Simon, wondering how he could be so drastically wondering, how she could have misjudged him so badly. How could he accept Barnaby's hospitality and act as if he enjoyed his company, yet all the while plan to kill him? Her lips thinned, and rage bellowed through her. He was a black-hearted beast, she thought savagely, glaring at him over the rim of her wine glass. By God, she would like nothing better than to run him through. Simon's eyes met hers, and fear rushed through her. Praying to God that he had not glimpsed her rage, she forced a smile and glanced away. After that, to her unease, she caught Simon staring at her from time to time, his expression puzzled. She decided, very good at deception. Emily got through the long evening, and she was thankful when Cornelia bid the gentlemen good night, knowing that Simon wouldn't be so foolhardy to attack Barnaby in his own home, and that the watchful man would be nearby. Emily joined her great aunt, leaving Barnaby and Simon to amuse themselves. Walking up the stairs, Cornelia glanced at her and asked, "Do you want to tell me what Simon has done to be in your black books?" Emily's step faltered, but recovering, she sent Cornelia what she hoped was an innocent look. "Simon, in my black books? Why, whatever do you mean?" Cornelia's magnificent eyes narrowed. "You never were a very good liar, and you have not improved with time." She sighed. Cornelia was right. She wasn't a very good liar, and there was no need to lie to her great aunt. She and Barnaby hadn't intended to hide anything from Cornelia. There just hadn't been time to tell her. As they reached the landing, she asked, "The hour isn't late. Shall I join you in your room for a chat?" Cornelia stared at her a moment. "Yes," she said, "I enjoy that." Arriving at Cornelia's room, she admitted the door to her sitting room shut. Cornelia said, "All right, tell me what is going on." Emily did, leaving nothing out. When she finally stopped speaking, Cornelia snorted. "You're fair and far off if you think that Simon Jocelyn is a smuggler and trying to kill Barnaby. The boy doesn't have it in him, you should know it. My money or nowhere else, he has as much reason to want Barnaby dead as anyone." Her brow arched. "After all, he is the smuggler. Why does he need anyone else to do his dirty work for him?" Emily stared open-mouthed at her for a moment. Was it possible that no Wells was acting on his own? It made sense. That she remembered the London backer, and her lips snapped shut. Shaking her head, she said, "You're forgetting whoever is backing the operation. That person certainly isn't Noel's." "You're right," Cornelia said slowly. Unhappily, she looked back at Emily. "I just can't believe that Simon would align himself with smugglers and involve himself in murder." Her lip curled. "If you mention Jeffrey's name, know that I have no trouble believing." Emily smiled wearily. "Jeffrey doesn't have any money. He could never finance the sort of operation Noel and his men are running." "I cannot believe that it is Simon," Cornelia said bluntly. She wagged a finger at Emily. "If you're going to persist in this folly, you're going to have to be a better hostess than you have been so far if you don't want him to become suspicious." Simon was suspicious. He knew Emily too well not to know that something was up. His lips quirked. From her glances tonight, he feared she'd separate his head from his shoulders, but racked his brains though he did. He could think of nothing he had done to offend or upset her. Remembering the hostile gleam in her eyes, he shook his head. She looked at him as if he were an enemy. Barnaby had hidden his reactions better, but there was something in the way his host looked at him. Alone in his room, he stalked restlessly around the gracious sitting room, pondering the problem. Barnaby's watchful reserve hadn't escaped his notice either. He dismissed the notion that they were ignored at his unexpected arrival. Barnaby had waved aside his offer to stay in the village, so that wasn't the cause of their reactions to him. When last they parted, they had all been on the same side, united against whoever had tried to kill Barnaby. That whoever wanted Barnaby dead hadn't struck him again had been encouraging. But while Tom thought they were overreacting, he and Matthew weren't betting that the problem had simply evaporated. Simon had come to look at Broadfoot's chestnut, that he admitted had just been an excuse to call upon Barnaby and Emily. He wanted to see for himself that it all was well at Windmere, and Matthew had agreed that a friendly visit wouldn't come amiss. Something was going on, that much was obvious. Emily and Barnaby didn't trust him any longer, and he needed to know why. He sighed, and Matthew needed to know.